with lots of Muslims on Twitter. There was one particular sister who said that she was in a genuine dilemma when it comes to who to vote for, because of course, because of that principle of the lesser of the two evils. And if you weigh up Donald Trump versus Harris, you find that even when it comes to Palestine, Donald Trump supposedly is meant to be worse. Donald Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem unilaterally. Donald Trump turned a blind eye to West Bank settlement activities. Donald Trump has said, in speeches that he would give carte blanche to Israel to finish the job. Whereas the Democrats and Harris, they're a little bit more measured when it comes to that type of language. But domestically as well, even if we argue that they are the same when it comes to international politics and when it comes to Palestine, domestically, the argument goes that Donald Trump would solicit a lot of pain, like he did when he came into office previously with the Muslim ban. And we know how that affected so many Muslims, and that continues to affect Muslims in all sorts of ways. So how do you tackle this less of the two evils argument when it comes to Harris and Trump?
I think that when it comes to the argument of the lesser of two evils, or that Trump will be worse, or Trump will do internationally worse than the Democrats did, I think that this argument is a very flawed one when it comes to the international side of things. Because if you look at, for example, 1973, you had the Arab-Israeli war, you had the oil embargo that took place, you had Kissinger running around, and then King Faisal assassinated in 1970s and the like. And then there is an election and a new government comes to power. Then you have the Iran-Iraq war, and then a new government comes to power in early 1990s. You have Sudan. John Garang in South Sudan is now laying siege to Juba. And then you have Sudan, which is then sanctions are imposed on Sudan. You have the Bosnian War, which starts with a Republican and ends with a Democrat president, both happy to turn a blind eye to the genocide that is taking place in Bosnia itself. Then you have a new president where you have the war on terror, in which imposes legislation against the Muslims. Then you have a Democrat president who comes after that Republican, who during the Arab Spring decides instead to support counter-revolutionary movements, support the UAE and the like. And then you have Donald Trump who comes in, who moves the embassy to Jerusalem and essentially comes in, albeit Trump perhaps saw less wars under his time than anybody else, but in any case, and then comes Biden who commits a genocide in Gaza itself. Right. When we talk about the lesser of the two evils internationally, I think that those who argue it are those who are rather not as attuned to what happens to the Middle East as much as they think they are. The reality is that you look through every decade, there is a calamity caused by a US president, regardless whether it's Democrat or Republican. The question is not whether it happens or not, it's whether you care about it or not. Do you care about what happened in Sudan in 1990s? Do you care about what happened to Bosnia in 1990s? Do you care about Iraq, Iran in 1980s? Do these issues matter? Were these issues something that you considered to be worse, or is worse by the measured by the standard of what affected you in terms of the war on terror, because it affected you, because Obama made you feel comfortable while continuing to destroy in the same level of magnitude as those before him came to destroy as well. So let's set that aside for starters. The second point is, I think it's important to be wary in terms of how we look at how Trump could be worse internationally. Again, I'm not endorsing Trump. I'm analyzing it politically. When Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem, first of all, it wasn't Trump who came up with the law. It was already passed from way back. It's just he implemented it. Secondly, when Trump implemented it, the reason, in my opinion, the EU did not follow him or any other country did not follow him is not because they didn't want to, but because Trump's politically ugly nature made it so that these countries didn't want to be seen to be supporting what they refer to as fascism. I'm not getting involved into whether it is or not. If an African American or a black South Asian woman president moved the embassy, it would be historic. And all the other people would follow because it's historic. And she could evoke heritage of struggle to render the violation of the Palestinian rights as historic. It would be much harder to counter that. The third point is that even when you look at it internationally, under the Biden-Harris administration, the US is supporting a roving militia in Sudan that is committing a genocide in Darfur for no other reason than US believes if Sudanese have elections, they will choose the opposite of what US wants, and therefore it's better to support the militia of Himeti and let him commit genocide and impose himself on Sudan. That's better than letting Sudan vote. And the UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed met with Biden to discuss Sudan issues as well at the time of this recording. Under the Biden administration, they opposed the withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan that Trump instigated and Trump forced. The Democrats wanted to stay in Syria. Trump insisted that they should leave Syria. The argument is Trump is worse than Biden. I'm saying they are at least the same. When you look at it domestically, first of all, the Muslim ban, and I know this because I had to go to the embassy to apply for a visa because I'd been to Sudan and therefore I couldn't use the ESTA. I had to go and apply for an interview to get the visa. The Muslim ban was an Obama legislation that Trump implemented. It was a Democrat legislation, the Muslim ban. It's a Democrat idea. The second point is, and now I go to the words of the mayor in Michigan, Trump is going to crack down on pro-Palestinian voices. What did Biden do in Columbia University when he sent in those police to brutally beat up the students, and in Ohio rip off the hijab of one of the state elected representatives, Monera, rip off the hijab in order to force them out of the encampments? What will Trump do that Biden hasn't done? In terms of banning TikTok in Congress, under the Biden-Harris administration, banning free speech, Biden is already doing it. So he's already surpassed Trump in that regard, or he's done at least what we expect Trump to do. Crack down on pro-Palestinian sentiment in the Congress itself. We're expecting Trump to do that. Biden is already doing it. Revocation of visas for those who are expressing pro-Palestinian sentiment, the idea of kicking immigrants out. Biden is already doing it. We're expecting Trump to do it. Biden is already doing it. In terms of what we expect Trump to do, the reality is Biden is already doing it. But Trump could be worse. What I'm saying is, it's not that Trump won't be worse or could not be worse. I'm saying is, what are you comparing it to? And even when you look at what Biden has done or what Harris has supported in Gaza, we're talking about the slaughter of 240,000 Palestinians. We're talking about limbs being collected in garbage bags and yet to be identified because they'd have no idea who they belong to. We're talking about heads being blown off in Rafah. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people being forced to leave Gaza City, Khan Yunis, Gaza City, Northern Gaza, Gaza City, Khan Yunis, Mawasi, etc., being bombed into oblivion, craters being bombed. We're talking about Biden, who has given Israel every single weapon that it has demanded. We're talking about the Biden-Harris administration that sent a general to Jordan to coordinate Israel's attack on Lebanon and also to take down those Iranian missiles. We're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that built a humanitarian pier in order to facilitate Marines to go in and support the Israelis in massacring the Palestinians themselves under the auspices of releasing the hostages. We're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that vetoed every resolution calling for a ceasefire. We're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that lobbied its allies to vote against the resolution calling for the end of occupation to the Israelis. We're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that threatened to sanction ICC officials if they issue an arrest warrant. On the words of Karim Khan, the prosecutor himself, we're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that threatened to sanction the ICJ if they found Israel guilty of genocide. We're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that cut funding to UNRWA in order to try to break the backs of the Palestinians, to force them to leave Gaza so that the Israelis can annex it and take it. We're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that on October 20th presented a bill to Congress to ask for $14 billion to give to Sisi and to give to King Abdullah of Jordan so that they can open the borders to allow the Palestinians to enter their lands. We're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that asked for $14 billion to build tents to keep the Palestinians there so that Israel could annex Gaza and Netanyahu could have his victory. We're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that when they met with the Palestinians at the White House, when Biden was shown the picture of what's happening in Palestine, he turned his head and said, I've seen these pictures, and showed no empathy. We're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that when an American citizen called Aisha Noor from Seattle was shot in the head by Israeli forces, 26-year-old, she was killed because she decided to leave Seattle, go to the West Bank, go to support the Palestinians, to provide humanitarian aid. The Israelis shot her in the head. We're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that didn't call her family, that didn't give condolences, and that went in front of the press and said that the bullet somehow ricocheted off the floor and hit her head instead. We're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that sent Blinken to Saudi Arabia to negotiate normalization ties while the genocide was still going on. We're in Harris administration that when companies said that our ships on the Red Sea are being stopped by the Houthis, and the Houthis have said, stop the genocide in Gaza and will let the ships through. Biden and Harris said, let the genocide continue, we'll bomb the Houthis instead. We're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that when Hezbollah of Lebanon said that make a ceasefire in Gaza and we will stop sending rockets to northern Gaza that will allow the settlers to go back to stolen land that they took from the Palestinians. When Hezbollah said we'll stop as a ceasefire, the American Biden and Harris said go and hit Hezbollah instead. You have the green light to go and hit Lebanon instead. We're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that when the Jordan farmer king went to Biden to tell him we need a ceasefire instead, Biden and Harris ignored him and sent him straight back to Jordan and sent him all those air miles telling him we're not going to do anything, but we expect you to help us to take down those Iranian missiles, and we expect you to make sure those Palestinians in Jordan do not cross the border into the Israel itself. We're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that when Netanyahu entered the Philadelphia corridor in order to stop the aid going into Rafah so that Netanyahu could go in and massacre those in Rafah, we're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that would hold Congress hearings insisting that all of this is good policy and we should continue supporting the Israelis to do so. Explain to me what Trump will do that is worse. Explain to me how much further you can go than this. Explain to me how 240,000 being killed according to Lancet. Explain to me how much further Trump is going to go. People say no, but there will be normalization of ties between the Saudis and between the Israelis and the like that Trump will facilitate. Biden hasn't been resisting. Saudis had clear demands and Biden was about to give them. What ruined it was the genocide. What ruined it was Bin Salman said, I'm ready to normalize, but this genocide, I can see people, they are angry. Jalal won't stop talking about me. Dili won't stop talking about me. These other imams won't stop talking about me. And I need now my imam to make dua for Palestine because my people are seeing what's happening and they're getting angry. And I'm telling them that I won't normalize in exchange for a Palestinian state. But I need to say this because this genocide makes it PR-wise, I'm unable to normalize with you. I'll keep my airspace open to show sincerity. I'll keep the land bridge open to show sincerity. I'll continue to restrict expressions of sympathy for Gaza to show sincerity. I'll keep my 2 billion funds in Jared Kushner's asset fund that invests in Israeli company. I'll keep that to show sincerity. But you need to understand, I need theater to convince these Muslims that normalization is like the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. It's not that Biden is somehow preventing normalization. Biden wants it, but can't find the deal that he so desperately craves. So even normalization will continue. The UAE did not kick out its Israeli ambassador from Abu Dhabi. Neither did Morocco. Bahrain didn't reverse normalization either. Tell me what Trump will do that Biden has not done. And this is the point that I'm saying, in that when people say Trump is going to be worse for who? Worse for the region? Every US president brings a calamity. And here is the damning indictment. What they mean is worse for me. They're suffering, I'm comfortable. I don't want to struggle. They're dying, you're telling me to be uncomfortable. I don't want it. They're being slaughtered, I'm used to it being over there. Don't bring it home. I worked hard. I have a good job. I have a good role. I have a good house. I have good money. Yes, they might interfere with my citizenship. Yes, they might ban Auntie Halima from going through New York JFK airport or the like. And this is the point that I finish on. But I want to summarize it in this point. Trump is going to be worse than Biden. Let's measure it. What do you mean relative to what happened to the Palestinians? Tell me what is so terrifying that you are willing to forgive the genocide in Gaza. Tell me what scares you so much that you are willing to step over Sidra's lifeless corpse with the legs blown off and say, excuse me, sorry. That you will step over Hind Rajab's cold corpse that was shot at 360 times by the Israelis while she sat in the car waiting for an ambulance that was blown by Israeli tank. That you step over Hind Rajab's body, sorry Hind. That you would step over Reem's body. Tell me what's so terrifying. You step over Reem, Ruh, spirit of my spirit. That you step over the child, you can't identify this child, the head's blown off. You step over them. You step over those 240,000 corpses to get to that ballot box. You walk by the Palestinian refugees walking by. Where are you going? I'm going to the ballot box. Voting for who? You're too ashamed, embarrassed to say it at that time. You walk to the ballot box. You walk over those bodies, piles and piles of those bodies. drenched in the blood. You see those kids in those images of the hospitals, crushed by the rubble, their arms are hanging, blood dripping for no other crime than some random people from the West said this land belongs to us. You will walk all over those corpses, go to the ballot box, vote for the one who did it to them, Jalal. Vote for the one who slaughtered them. Vote for the one who massacred them. Vote for the one who continued to lend every impunity to them. Vote for the one who broke the whole international order. To slaughter those children. To slaughter our brothers and sisters. To commit the most brutal genocide. You will cross all of those corpses to the ballot box. You will put a cross next to the name of Harris, the one who committed the genocide with Biden. And you will yell to those spirits and say, I did it for you. You will look at them in the eye and say, I voted this for you. You will say that I voted for the one who killed you. I voted for the one who gave the bombs to slaughter you. More bombs than Dresden. More bombs than Hiroshima. More bombs than Nagasaki. More bombs than World War II. I voted for the one who gave unfettered access to all those weapons. I voted for the one who sent the Marines to help kill you. And you will dare to look me in the eye and say you did it for Palestine. It's not for Palestine. It's for your comfort. It's for your status quo. It's for the luxury that you live. Trump is not going to blow up your limbs. You're not going to have a limb amputated in the next 4 years because there's no anesthesia. You survived 4 years of Trump. You could survive again. 240,000 Palestinians did not survive 4 years of Biden. You didn't have your home taken from you. It wasn't handed to Ben Shapiro. It wasn't given to Ben Walsh. The National Guard didn't ethnically cleanse California of Muslims. They didn't go to the East Coast. None of that happened to you in the 4 years. None of that will happen to you in the next 4 years. What are you so scared of? That you will go to the ballot box and say, I'm voting for the genociders. Why would you rescue Zionism? Why would you rescue Zionism when it's buckling? Why would you restore their invincibility when it's breaking? Why would you have the chance to break the two-party system? You go and rescue Zionism. Why would you have the chance to finally let people lose because they supported Zionism? Let there be justice in the world. You will not struggle like the Palestinians. You will not suffer anything like them. Don't say you're doing it for Palestine. Be honest and say you're doing it for yourself. Because you don't want to be a people of struggle. Because the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the reason he was so successful was because he continued to persevere through the struggle. He was offered the dunya, he said, I will not give up justice. He was offered the comforts, he said, I will not give up justice. But we're telling our kids that you are not successful until you have the home and the Tesla. Even when you think about it.
Sami, it seems to me that what you're calling for is a lot of possibly temporary pain if the worst case scenario is that Trump turns out to be bad for Muslims, at least domestically. You're basically asking Muslims in America to sacrifice and to bear the pain, if there is pain. And I suspect the pain, as you've just rightly said, is insignificant compared to the pain that our brothers and sisters are going through. But then, nonetheless, there may be some pain. And I suppose it brings the question up, are Muslims in the West generally, because we live in comfort, relatively speaking, but Muslims in America who live in maybe extreme comfort, are Muslims in America ready to bear that pain? Are they ready to vote for their Palestinian brothers and sisters?